let people know that we are recording this session to be able to post it up on our library research YouTube channel. So if you're uncomfortable with being filmed, yeah, I mean, I think this is mainly going to be an informational webinar, but you can obviously, not appear on camera or speak if you don't wish to be recorded. Yeah, as I say, this will be then made available for those unable to attend the webinar, or for future reference if you'd like to go back and sort of review the content. My name is Sam Gibbard. I'm a information librarian at RMIT. Also on the call we have Adam Rivette, who's also a librarian working with research data with me. And yeah, we're basically really excited to introduce you to Figshare, which RMIT University has just brought an institutional license. Now, before we formally start and get into the content, I'd just like to acknowledge that that today, we meet on stolen lands. I'm personally sitting on the country of the Wiradjuri people of the Kulin Nations. And I'd just reflect that sovereignty was never ceded and a treaty still has yet to be signed. And I'd like to pay my respects to ancestors and elders, past, present, and particularly emerging. And yes, I stand in solidarity with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Now, thank you all for coming on today. As I said, this is going to be a quick sort of visual walkthrough of Figshare. Figshare is a platform that's been brought in for publishing research data. I'm not sure how familiar everyone will be. This might be your first time seeing it, but what I'm going to do is just walk through some of the examples of types of data that you can share, how the platform works, and answer any questions as we go. So feel free to use the chat function. Adam, my colleague, is happy to sort of answer questions as we go, and hopefully, you'll be a bit more familiar. We also are available at research.data@rmit.edu.au. We'll put that email address in the comments section. That's basically goes to Adam and myself, and we basically can assist you with uploading a data set, with describing your data set, or any questions related to Figshare, basically. Now, I'll just bring up Figshare for you. Maybe a quick show of hands in the comment section. How many of you have actually used Figshare before? Just so I can get a sense of the experience level. And I'm just going to see now. Can you see?
Getting a lot of no's, Sam.
Okay, no, that's good.
That's good. Ideal.
Yeah, and really, this is our sort of first go at this, but yeah, we literally went live with. I think we got someone. That's all right. I'll just put you on mute there, Nassim. That's all right. Okay, so you can all see now. This is the landing page up on the share screen here, which is the institutional version of Figshare. So Figshare is a platform for sharing research data. Research data can comprise of a vast range of material, whether it's data collected from scientific instruments, whether it's graphs, charts, PDFs, files. So there's literally a myriad of types of data that you might want to share that you've collected in the process of undergoing your research. So traditionally, the way that you can share, the results of your research is sort of limited in a sense to published outputs, journal articles, and even you know, for a long time, all you could really share would be the published output and maybe some supplementary material. So to fill that gap and also to encourage reuse and sort of aid in discoverability of people's research. Research data platforms like Figshare have come along, and also the kind of growth in interest and promotion of research data has become a big thing. So just this year, this has actually filled a gap at RMIT. Before, if you were interested in sharing research data, you know, beyond RMIT systems, you sort of had to track down these solutions yourself. Figshare does run a free version of their site, but it's limited in the storage capacity, and also it's limited in it that it doesn't identify you clearly, you know, from your organization. So the benefits for RMIT obviously is that you know, they're able to offer you space on this platform to publish your research data, and also to collect under the umbrella of RMIT all of the associated research that's being produced. So the really I think key sort of attractions to Figshare is its ease of use, and I think it's sort of visual appeal. It's a quite a simple looking platform, and here's you know, you can see as you scroll down, these are the sort of data sets that we've got in so far, and they're represented. If there's a visual icon within your data set, then it'll grab that as your sort of thumbnail. So I will now take you through a couple of examples of data sets so that you can understand like how and why this works. So this is a bit of a associated research I did while I was cataloging a project last year for the library. So this data set here comprises of a PDF and associated images. So you can see they're presented really nicely here with thumbnail images. You can actually interact with those images by just clicking on them and having a look. And I can scroll through those. I can even have a preview of the PDF. So, you know, rather than, I suppose, you know, wanting to share some research data with a colleague and sending them a link to, you know, a Google Drive or a Dropbox, for instance, they can instantly kind of interact with your data, and it's very visually presented. So I mean, that's what I speak to about it being very visual and easy to use. You can sort of see here. Then further down, you've basically got the options of putting in associated metadata with your data set. So you know, you populate it with a description. A lot of people will use existing descriptors. So if you've produced a journal article, you might want to reuse your abstract to describe your data set and just amend that. So there doesn't have to be a lot of work involved. And then what you can also do is assign these fixed categories here, or also free text keywords. So it's really about you know, putting in the metadata that's going to aid in this data set being discoverable. So you want to think broadly about, you know, what terms someone's going to look for, and then they'll be able to find this data set. It also has a variety of tools here where you can export the data set into things like RefWorks and BibText. So the other really interesting thing that you can do is you can get detailed statistics on how many people are viewing your data, downloading it, and then potentially, if it's cited, then you'll be able to track these metrics. Also, it records broadly alt metrics from other things, like if the data set is referenced on something like Wikipedia, for example, it's going to trace all of those things. So it's really important, I think, in this age of measuring impact, to understand how people are using data that you've shared, and being able to report back on that. Now, if I go back out, as I mentioned, Figshare handles a lot of different file types. I think it's somewhere upwards of 1,500 different file types. So here, for instance, we've got a series of audio recordings which make up this data set. This student produced a audio documentary. And obviously, in the case of collecting all of that information, a large amount of the documentaries that she did record were not used in the final documentary. So she might have only used a couple of minutes from one person when she recorded an hour interview. So that this researcher was able to then put all of the interviews up, so that in future cases, someone might be able to use other parts of those interviews that she wasn't able to. So while on this case, you have the full finished product, which is the audio documentary. You've also got another 40 files of transcripts and full audio from all of the other interviews conducted. So it's a really interesting, great way to share things that you collected, took time and energy and effort to produce, but don't necessarily you're not necessarily going to use those, and make them available for someone else. So reuse is a very important aspect to sharing research data, as I touched upon, and it's something I think that's becoming much more in the focus of universities. So a big thing that crops up is, well, what if I want to share my data, but I don't just want to make it publicly available? I want to sort of control access to it. So here's an instance. I'll just show you. This is actually another file that I've uploaded, where this is my master's thesis. So I didn't actually want to make that publicly available to absolutely anyone to download, but what you can do here is mediate the access. So I've actually got here a note saying that if you want to contact me directly, what I can then do as an individual researcher is send a private link to someone so they can view the file, but it's not publicly available. So I think control, ultimately control over your data is a very important consideration for people. And just to emphasize that putting something onto Figshare doesn't mean that you relinquish your control at all. You can still continue to mediate access, or withdraw it if at a later date. You can obviously pull a data set down as easily as put it up. I think overall, we don't want to encourage sort of putting things up if you're unsure, and that's where sometimes it's good to have a conversation, with either the data librarians, or if you're an HDR, speak to your supervisor about putting things up, and just get that final sign off. But the other thing that you can do as well, I don't actually have an example here live, but you can set an embargo on a data set too. So say you are about to have a journal article published, and you'd like the data to be available, but not before your article comes out. You can set an embargo. I'll show you how to do that in a second, but I actually had to just unpublish that record temporarily while we're making some changes. So that's a couple of instances of how you can control the data once it's gone up. Now, what I can show you is what it's like to upload the data. So I'm going to log in here. I think I've already logged in, actually. I'd point out that to access Figshare, we've publicized the URL, but it's single sign-on. So your university login details work seamlessly across onto this platform. it will automatically create you a profile, which will be populated with your name. And pretty much that's the only thing. So one of the first things you're going to want to do when you go in to Figshare is make sure that you've filled out some details about yourself. And I mean, really, that only needs to be perhaps a job title, your field of interest. And you can also see here that you can link your ORCID. Now, your ORCID ID is pivotal to add to Figshare, because what that'll do is actually make sure that you've got that identifier, so people know which Sam Gibbard or which Gary you are. Furthermore, when you go back into ORCID, you can link your Figshare account so that ORCID will automatically harvest anything that you publish to Figshare back into your ORCID account. So if you're not familiar with ORCID, drop me and Adam a line. We can put you on to a librarian who can give you a quick 5-minute overview of how to register for an ORCID account. But it's crucial in this day and age to have identifiers so that people know and systems know who you are and can attach content correctly.
Hey Sam, can you hear me, or have you muted me as well?
No, go ahead.
Okay, just want to mention two things in passing based on certain questions. One, if you could just briefly touch upon the Creative Commons licenses that are available when you upload data, and also about confidential data and how Figshare handles that.
No problem. Yeah, I'll show you that. So yeah, so that's just your profile. So yeah, when you want to go to upload, I'll talk you through those options in the upload screen, because all of that sort of follows. So here's actually what you see when you have data. You can see it all listed here, and from here you can actually go in and edit, make changes to data that you've already uploaded. But say it's your first time, I'll take you through that process. So you can either drag files to this box here or browse. I typically go to create a new item here, and then that will bring up the interface you see here. So it's ease of use. This is the only screen that you need to work on. So it's fairly straightforward, but take your time. And again, if you want some help and support in more detail, Adam and I are available to sort of walk you through, the options, and sometimes, you might have questions about the appropriateness of one category or another, but all of that can sort of be worked out as you go. Bear in mind that you don't have to publish a record. You can sort of work on a draft version and then ask Adam and I to sort of have a look at your record and help you with it if you're unsure. So again, if you want to browse and drag a file, it's as simple as just clicking on here. If I just wanted to upload a file there, this is, oh, okay, I'm not sure why it's got an error there, but I'll check into that. That's basically what happens. You would upload the file here, and then you work through these fields. So the green fields are all mandatory. But yeah, so you've got a title, you pop in your author, and you can add multiple authors as well. A lot of data sets might be co-authored or have other people that have worked on the project, and you can identify them here. Categories is, I think this is fairly UK centric, but you can type in a keyword, for instance, and so I'm a librarian, that might be the most suitable category for me, is library and information studies. When you get to group, if you want to identify more broadly as just RMIT University, you can do that, but it'd be quite useful if you're aligned to a particular college or school to indicate that here. So that's just with a drop-down menu. And then item type, obviously there's a wide range. It's very useful to identify, I think, where you can be specific with the type, because sometimes people might be looking for a particular type of research data. So, you know, if it's software, you know, identify it as software, because someone might only be interested in software code, for instance, and they might, you know, not find your data set if you don't identify it correctly. But again, that's something that you can speak to Adam and myself about. So I've just called this a figure because it's a JPEG. These keywords you can just sort of add as you go. They're basically free text, or it will give you suggestions. So you just hit the enter key, and then your description. As I said, you can copy an abstract, or you know, put whatever text you want in here. This is you know, a crucial part of yeah, I think increasing the discoverability as well. And yeah, describe your data. If it uses a particular type of software to access it, put it in there. If you've used a particular instrument, all of that information aids in the person who's using or wanting to view your data able to access it more fully. Then you can add grant information by putting in the grant number or adding free text yourself. You can add web references here. You may have a data set that's related to a published output. You can link to the published output by putting in a link there in the references. So you might want to link to your journal article directly, and vice versa. You know, within your journal article, you might want to link directly to this data set, and I'll show you how to do that in 2 seconds. Yeah, Gary asked about licenses. So essentially, you know, as I said, you maintain the ultimate control over the data, and in that you can select the type of license that you want the data set to be controlled by. So there's everything from, hey, use my data, do what you want with it, which is, you know, like a Creative Commons, you know, let's see here. Yeah, so say Creative Commons 4.0. That's basically, you know, you're saying you can use my data, but I want to be recognized, and I don't want you to use it commercially, which is NC, and ND means no derivatives. So you know, you can't sort of like make small changes and then put it up as your own data set. But yeah, these are things like it's good to sort of read into. You can see all the different types of licenses here, and understand, you know, what do you want people to do? You know, what do you want people to be able to do with it? If you don't sort of mind, you know, you want it to be completely free. Yeah, you might want to go with something like the Open Data Commons. So you say, look, they can modify, transform, build upon it. But yeah, understanding licenses is important, and that's something we're happy to advise on as well. Now, when you get down to the bottom, then you've got some choices here. Now, I mentioned if you wanted to apply an embargo, that basically means you just selected a time period and say, you know, how long do you want this to basically be under that embargo? So if I could make the entire record, that means you won't even be able to discover this record until that time period passes, or I make the record public, but the data itself is not available until that time period passes. And yeah, there's a number of reasons, but yeah, you might be about to publish your thesis or a journal article, and you don't want that data available until that date. Generate private link is essentially the what I referred to when I made the data private. So as in the case of my thesis, I can then send people this private link, which allows them access to the data, but for everyone else, it's hidden. So that's a useful tool if you really want to have that ultimate control over who's accessing. Finally, probably the best functionality that Figshare offers is the ability to reserve a digital object identifier. Now that is a unique persistent identifier that links directly back to your data. So all you need to do when you want to cite your data or your data set gets cited is include this digital object identifier, which I'm not going to press this now because it's not published, but it's essentially a URL, and you can put that into a journal article or web page or anything, and it will link back to this site. There's a number of other significant benefits to using DOIs in that for gathering metrics, alt metrics, that's how the those systems work. They will look for that DOI, see where it's been reused, and then update accordingly. So this used to be an incredibly cumbersome process to get a DOI. Adam and I would have had to make it manually on a different system. You can just do this yourself and then share that. So that's a really exciting innovation that we're able to give to researchers. And yeah, there's a data set that a researcher's already putting up in his journal article this week, and he's just working on the record in the background. Otherwise, I'd show it to you. But yeah, he's minted a DOI. That DOI has gone into his paper, and so that should really increase the visibility and hopefully see people citing his data set. So yeah, that's basically a very quick overview of sort of what the public sees and then what you see when you go to upload a data set. You can see here, then you would just tick on this box when you filled all that information in, and you can either save the changes or go to publish it once you're ready. Yeah, as I've said numerous times, we're happy and standing by to sort of assist you, you know, in doing this. But I think again, one of the big benefits to Figshare is the ease of use, and I think it's all fairly intuitive once you sort of get in there and have a play around yourself. So yeah, happy to see if there was a couple of questions, or if anyone wanted to see anything else while we're here.
The one question that's kind of a complicated one is regarding the where the data is physically stored on the Amazon servers, given Amazon servers back up Figshare. And just to quote the comment from Patrick, for some funding bodies, the data must remain on Australian soil. For example, cloud store data is located in Australia and therefore has no issues with sovereignty, whereas Figshare is a more complicated matter in that regard.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Patrick. What you can actually do as well, and apologies, I missed this right at the top. You don't actually have to upload your data to Figshare. You can use it as a metadata record. So in the instance of CloudStore, store your data on CloudStore. You can then generate a public URL, and then what you can do is link the file here at the top. So you're not actually storing that data physically on Figshare. You pop your URL here, and then when people come to the data set on Figshare, it will then redirect them physically to CloudStore, thus satisfying that requirement to have the data stored in Australia. So that's also useful. I mean, you know, there's a myriad of other platforms that people use, and you may find, yeah, that it suits you to have it your data physically located on a different site, but you want it to be visible on the Figshare platform. Figshare also links out to the library catalog. These records will be published into other sources like Trove, the National Library Catalog, plus the Australian National Data Service. So when you talk about you know, creating visibility for yourself and for your work, I mean, this is a really great tool for doing that. So it doesn't just sit on, you know, on RMIT Figshare, because of the you know, the platform itself publishes out the records. It means that you're reaching many more people. And I'll just see. Yeah, and Jason's asked a question about potentially using another researcher's data. Again, you know, it's about referring to the license. So, you know, if you're unfamiliar with the licenses, you know, when you go to download their data, it will clearly indicate what license terms that researcher is making their data available under, and yeah, and if you're not sure, then you can easily cross-reference those those licenses on the Creative Commons website to understand what they mean and what you can and can't do. Another thing that that you can do, you know, is sometimes it's good to contact a researcher, you know, after you've identified that their data might be useful, and have a conversation with them directly.
It's worth mentioning also, Sam, if I've got this right, that if another researcher downloads your data on Figshare, you get a notification about it as well. So it goes both ways in terms of them citing your data sets, and as well as you referencing or citing their data sets.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you know, obviously, you know, this is taken, you know, that in some disciplines, science, for example, data sharing is a lot more commonplace than possibly in areas like the humanities. But you know, increasingly funding bodies and grants require that you make data available. So, you know, really, we're sort of the main reason we got Figshare in was to satisfy that compliance aspect. But I think also once you become familiar with how it works and are comfortable with the concept, it actually is, you know, there's no better way to sort of increase people's awareness of your work and engage with you. So there's a lot of different types of things you can share as well. It doesn't have to just be linked to a published output. You may you know like you may have got halfway through researching a particular topic and then gone, well, you know, I'm not going to finish this, but perhaps someone else could pick up this trail and finish. So I think also if you've had negative responses in research that didn't sort of fit what you were expecting to get, that's also useful to share. And yeah, I think there's just, you know, the possibilities are limitless, really. And you know, if it took you time and energy to sort of create, then probably you know, there's a reasonable expectation that someone could benefit from that. And yeah, we'd encourage you to think broadly about what you could share, and come and ask us if you've got questions and want to know more.
Okay, I think, yeah, that's no more questions, Sam. I think everyone's got to run to other meetings because we're all living in this world now. So yeah.
Yep, and I've shared the Figshare FAQ at the bottom here, which has got some more sort of detailed answers to questions. But did we put in? I'll just put in our generic email address as well.
Yeah, and I've also added a link to the LibGuide, which has all the information and also a bunch of useful videos about the functionality that you detailed today, in case people want to go back and investigate particular aspects of that functionality.
Excellent. Yep, and yep, we're standing by if you want to have a individual call or a web chat with Adam or myself. Yeah, we can sort of walk you through how to do this very easily. So yeah, look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for coming today, and hopefully speak to you soon.